All
Hi,
right.
everyone. Hello. I'm here with my good friend, Jess Serrante. She is a longtime climate activist, an ACE coach, a licensed academy trainer, and now the creator of the We Are the Great Turning podcast, which I'm very excited to talk to you about. So, welcome, Jess. Thanks for being with me today.
I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, me too. We've known each other for a long time, overlapping in most of those things I just named. So I'm excited to talk about a lot today. And just I love to start these interviews with what are you celebrating right now?
Well, the you just named it. I'm
I know the
celebrating
answer, but tell the people.
that just a couple days ago, I launched the podcast, We Are the Great Turning, which is a 10-part series that I made with my beloved teacher, mentor, friend, Joanna Macy. And it was it took us the better part of 2 years from idea to release to make this. And so it's just this huge, uh, this, yeah, the celebration energy is big this week in having made it to this point and now getting to share this labor of love with the world.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for being here to talk about that and the journey leading up to it. So, for those who don't know, the podcast is called We Are the Great Turning, available wherever you get your podcasts. And so what does that mean? We are the great turning. What is the great turning?
So in in Joanna's teachings, we talk about three stories of our time, three stories that are simultaneously true about what's happening. And in essence, excuse me, they are business as usual or the paradigm of global corporate capitalism. There is those of us who see that that paradigm is destroying our planet, and we call that the great unraveling, everything sort of falling apart as a result. And then the third is those of us who see that that is falling apart, or see that unraveling and don't want it to have the last word. And so we're building a more just and life sustaining world. And that is what we call the great turning, that paradigm shift. And it's called We Are the Great Turning because the only way that this more just and life sustaining society comes into being is by us being it. I'd say it's an ontological practice of us embodying and being the presence of the kind of world that we want to live in. And so that's why it's called what it is.
I love it. Um, you said it's ontological.
Hmm.
Um, there's I love to ask people who get on this because it's kind of a tricky question. Like, what does that mean? It's ontological. And in particular, obviously, you and I were trained in an ontological coaching model, and this work that reconnects that you're talking about, which we'll get into more later, is ontological, kind of from a different angle. So how do you see ontology and ontological processes based on your unique overlap of your work?
Yeah. The way that I've been thinking about it a lot lately in the last couple of years as I've been working on this project and the title that I chose, right? It was like one of the first things that was clear about what we were making has really helped me remember this is um, the ability to call forth the kind of like who I want to be in service of the world that I long for, and to connect, to live in a way that I am connected to a future that I am actively creating, which is a bit of an imaginative leap, right? But like, I think about, what it is. I'm picturing the playing field and we have visionary and physical reality, and we're carrying pieces of the world that exists for us in visionary reality that we can like feel it when we close our eyes, right? And then we live in this world, which is also extraordinarily beautiful, but there's so much more that we deserve and that we want, and that we can allow ourselves to, by connecting deeply with the possibility that we see, be the presence of that world now. And through being the presence of it, it multiplies and flourishes. It's like being seeds that will become a forest or a garden.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's very similar to what we do often on the individual level with coaching, when you're describing taking a vision that is already here with us, it's
Mhm.
already present, but just not in physical reality, and then moving it moment by moment into physical reality. And I love how you're putting it because it's just like, as a human society, as a human family, as and in certain ways as one being collectively, we're doing that,
Yeah,
taking a collective vision and
exactly
moving it
it.
into physical reality.
That's exactly
Which
it.
is,
And oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, one of the ways that I think about it too is it's exactly the same as that, but I have to like zoom back to see it because it's multi-generational project, right? The transition to a more just and life-sustaining world started long before we were here, and it will continue long after us. We are one part in a multi-generational um, effort to create a culture that reflects our values, um, or more reflects our values than the one that we currently live in. And I really, one of the reasons that I name the multi-generationality of it is that, first of all, that I love it because it sort of takes the pressure off a little bit, and it also makes me feel so much more held, that like I'm a part of something that is like bigger than I can conceptualize in sense of time and effort and um, love and the volume of um, comrades and friends in this effort that I will never know because it's too big.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's a lot in what you said that I want to explore. And we were talking earlier, we could probably do a whole series, a whole podcast just about your podcast. Um, but there was you were just speaking to a sense of belonging and connection, way beyond yourself, way even beyond what you can reach out and touch. Generations you won't meet, generations that came before us, people who you'll never meet. Um, and I think that speaks to why Joanna Macy's work is called the work that reconnects. So for those people who are just hearing about the work that reconnects in Joanna Macy, what is in its essence the work, the purpose of it, the um, essence of it?
It's so much. I always struggle so much to articulate this in a snappy way, so bear
Giving
with
you
me.
very simple, easy to answer questions.
Um,
Describe the essence of the work that reconnects. Go for it.
the work that reconnects is a set of frameworks, like ways of thinking, and also a set of practices, exercises that we do with other people that are designed to reconnect us, to bring us, um, sort of wipe our eyes clean of what Joanna sometimes calls like our cultural amnesia, where we fall into believing the myth of separation, that we're not inextricably linked and connected to one another and to this planet and part of this great web of life. So the work is designed to help us in a really like heart-centered and embodied way shed that myth of separation and come into a sense of reconnection. And the work follows when you do a work that reconnects workshop, which is the traditional. There's many. Joanne has written 13 books. So there's many ways that people can read about these ideas. Um, and if you're new to it, I recommend starting with a book called Active Hope. Um, but it's traditionally offered in the form of a workshop where you're with other people having conversations about these topics, and we journey through 4 stages. The first is on beginning with gratitude. The second is honoring our pain for the world. The third is seeing with new eyes, which is really about um, coming into a deeper sense of interconnection and more like depth of clarity about that. And then the fourth is going forth, which is about action and acting in service of life. And so in the work, we travel through all four of those in this spiral again and again. And every time it's new and every time there's new insights, um, as a practice of bringing ourselves deeper into knowing of who we are and what we're a part of. How
Well
was
done.
that?
I think you did
Did
it.
I do it? Okay,
Yeah, you should do a podcast.
great.
Um, and yeah, and you mentioned intergenerational. Speaking of intergenerational, uh, Joanna Macy is 95, and this is part of the carrying forth from one generation to the next. So tell us a little bit about how your relationship with Joanna Macy started and evolved, and then from there, what it's like to be in this unique position of um, kind of carrying this forth into future generations.
Yeah. Oof. Well, like my eyes started to like well up when you said, "What's it like?" Because it's the most extraordinary, one of the most extraordinary things to ever happen to me. But I'll start with how it happened, which is that in 2014, I was a climate organizer. So the whole first part of my career from college, from like 2010 to 14 or 15, I was working in corporate accountability, environmental nonprofits. I worked for Greenpeace and I worked for an organization called Rainforest Action Network. And I was so passionate about that work. And as is often the case, I was exhausted. I was burning out. I was running a campaign pushing against these major corporations, and I just felt so small. And I knew that I wanted to do something good in service of the world and wasn't clear about how to do it. And um, that was when I came to while I was in that job, I did, it's got a new name now. It's not Mastering Life's Energies anymore. It's, what's the course called now?
Mastering your life, very simply.
Mastering Your Life now. Okay. Um, so I did that course and it led me into a sabbatical from my work and just like stepping out to try to get more clarity. And it was that summer of rest and sort of trying to get new perspective that my entry into the ACE work brought me into, that led me to my first retreat with Joanna. And so both bodies of work really came into my life at the same time, which was really extraordinary. Um, and yeah, that was the beginning of what has now been a 10-year friendship with Joanna. And um, yeah, and over the years, I've just had the privilege of getting to know her, and she shifted from the teacher in the front of the room while I was sitting there with a big group to a thought partner and someone who I've spent many, many hours um, sitting on her couch or at her table, really weaving both the realities of our personal lives and with the wisdom of what she teaches, and we all sort of like conspiring the great turning. Like how do we use what's happening in our lives to move us to be in service of the world? How can we use it as ways to deepen our understanding of our interconnection? So it's just been such a rich friendship and thought partnership over the years, and it was 10 years, or I guess more or less eight into our friendship that we began uh, this project, which has really been it's a legacy project for her. Joanna's 90, she'll turn 95 in a couple days. And um, it has been the great honor of my life to sit and have these conversations with my beloved teacher about what's happening in the world now and the wisdom that she teaches, and teaching through our relationship. Uh, it's just extraordinary, and I feel like in my years as a coach, spent a lot of time thinking about purpose and what it is to support someone to live on purpose with clarity about who you are and what your deepest longing is. And this project has put me squarely in a space of like, I am living, this is what Dharma is. This is what clarity of purpose of what I'm here for feels like. Um, which is it's the greatest blessing.
Wow. It is. It is extraordinary.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I feel very, very grateful.
mhm. I want to explore a little more kind of your role as a coach while being so involved with Joanna Macy and her work, and how that's overlapped for you in your journey, showing up as a coach, especially working with climate activists, a coach for uh, social change movements, activists, and then at the same time working so closely with Joanna Macy. How did those interact and feed each other? How did that help you evolve as you went through this journey?
Mm. In some ways, it's felt like um, learning. I mean, it's so perfect that these two bodies of work came into my life at the same time. That the work that reconnects gave me a sense of who we could be and how we could understand ourselves, and it connected me in deeper ways to my commitment to justice, my commitment to a livable world, and um, and then the ACE tools gave me really solid, practical ways that I could move myself and help other people move past the inevitable challenges, right? Like again, I think about visionary and physical reality with the great turning, like living in a world that is truly life sustaining, being a vision, and what it is, like how we bump up against that threshold at the middle, right? And the monkey mind and the point of mastery. Like uh there's so much um like energy that needs to be rearranged in vision or in physical reality for us to have that world, right? And so the amount of worry and doubt and fear that kicks up. And so that I have through ACE a set of tools for navigating that. Like it doesn't push me, and that I can help other people to not get stopped there, but to see this is just part of how it works. And you're on track. You're doing the work. Is the greatest. It's just a powerful combination in my mind, and in my experience. And um, it took a while. When you're learning new skill sets, it's really valuable to practice them. Like, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I sort of like walking on wobbly legs with both practices for a while, and so they lived pretty separately in my
Yeah.
life as I was trying to make sense of really what it is to coach someone and to create the ontological space, and then to think about the great turning and all the things that I was learning through the work. And it was years of trying to figure out how do these two things fit together. And it's been very exciting to get to a point where I can now weave these two models together and talk about the great turning and the playing field at the same time, and like tell people the like Shambhala warrior prophecy, which is one of Joanna's most famous teachings, while talking about their purpose and setting their goals and like um yeah. Does that answer your question? I think I lost track of it a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well, I appreciate what you're saying as um, you you really intentionally took the time to master each context in its own right
Yeah.
before innovating and blending them together. I think it speaks to your integrity as a coach and your integrity as a practitioner of Joanna Macy's work. Um, and I love that you're seeing clearly the overlap. I mean, you're holding that space in between, and I think that's a great lesson for new coaches or people considering being
Mhm.
coaches, because so often it's like, great, here's this new coaching tool. How do I combine it with all this other stuff? And to be able to step back and just say, no, let me really learn this for its own sake, and then see how I can effectively uh, combine it if it's beneficial for the people we're serving, or not. There's times I'm sure that separately coaching someone or separately doing work reconnect is what serves people the most.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, on a similar note, I'm curious, um, maybe for coaches who are not studying for 10 years with Joanna Macy, um, but see, even if they don't use these words, something akin to the Great Turning. In other words, we can't help but be aware that the world is dramatically and rapidly changing.
Mhm.
And so many people, I think, are questioning, like, what is my role in this? Like, can I even have an active role in this? Which is, I love when you talk about active hope, because one thing that I see overlaps is with the work that reconnects and with at least the ACE coaching model. Uh, they both create a container where all is well, and it's a space that can contain uh, anything that we're experiencing in our human experience, big emotions, scary thoughts, stuff that we try to shy away from, and creating a space that all of that can come up and we somehow see a way to move forward in action.
Yeah.
And for folks who are seeing, like, is there even a way I can participate actively? Um, what's the question here is how do you see coaches who are just they're called to be coaches and they have some desire to participate in the great turning? What do you see the role of coaches?
Uh, Gosh, it's huge. I mean, the I see the privilege of coaching as getting to be someone who helps other people to be more of themselves and to live in deeper alignment with the world that with like who they are. And one of the great heartbreaks of this moment, I think, is that we live in a culture that separates us, that justifies systems of oppression, that justifies the destruction of our planet. And for so many of us, um, that doesn't sit right. That is not true to who we are. And yet we're products of that culture, right? Like I am a product of the capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal culture that I come from. And I've inherited a lot of thoughts that aren't mine from those systems. And yet, like my spirit, my soul knows that that's not who I am. I know that that's not who I am. And and yet, when the pressure's on, when I'm up against challenges, those things come up. And I'm not proud of, and I think that's true for so many of us. And it means so much that there are ways that we can see ways that we're being in the world that are not truly authentic, and then choose to shift our attention to be reflections of who we know we really are, which is a reflection of the kind of world we really want, right? Which is the generosity and the creativity and the compassion and all of those values. And so coaching is an essential um, tool to help each of us individually be microcosms of the world that we're collectively trying to create. It's so it's so important. And I mean, I've seen, like, I've from the very beginning of my career as a coach, I've been coaching climate and social justice leaders. And it's so cool to watch what can happen within an organization, within a system, when one person has built more of the muscle to show up in integrity in the face of all of the challenging stuff that's happening in our groups now, right? The ways that we undercut one another, or we're not working together, or we're not showing up as the presence of 100% support. Um, it's transformative, not just to those individuals, but to the groups that they're a part of and the missions that they're in service of. I
It
get very
reminds me.
excited about this.
Yeah, I love it. Me too. Me too. Um, it reminds me of the metaphor of the hologram that we use a lot at
Yeah.
ACE.
Hmm.
And I think it's uh, we first kind of on an individual level see, for those watching who don't know, hologram is those little three-dimensional images um, formed from these special photographic plates. And if you cut them into pieces, each piece has the whole, and there's all these properties. And so
Hmm.
we see how we show up in one moment of our life is how we show up to our whole life. But what you're pointing to is even on a level beyond that, because so often when we think in a linear way, it's like there's too many problems. The problems are too big. Like, who cares what I do? And that's the resignation a lot of people deal with. But what you're pointing to in a really tangible way is when one person shifts the way they're showing up, it can have profound, uh, almost instant effect on how a group shows up and a system shows up. And that's so powerful because you're speaking to the much, much broader impact a coach can make than
Hmm.
one life at a time. Okay, this person's individual life is better, but what about the 8 billion other people in the world? But to create this holographic shift
Yeah.
is pretty profound.
Yeah. It makes me think of how in the how to lead a successful group course, we learn to coach a group by coaching one entity, the group as one mind. And that, I mean, learning that course blew my mind. um, and I mean, so it's the same, it's that holographic principle. If we stop seeing each of us as individuals, and we see ourselves as a part of a whole, as a global whole, right? Then any individual, one of the plates or one of the, like, I don't actually understand. I'm not going to use the
Nodes.
metaphor right. One of the
Yeah.
nodes that it
Yeah.
reflects outward into what is reflected in the collective, because we're not separate from one another. So the ripple effect is um, well, it's undeniable. It's or there's another word I'm looking for, but I'm forgetting it.
Yeah. It's like a fundamental part of the impact of our work.
Yeah. Yes.
So, this is so great. And we could talk about so many things for so long. Jess, I'm so glad we're having an
Me too.
opportunity to have this conversation. Um, taking it back to the podcast, uh, kind of going on this chain of reconnecting, tapping into the truth that we are all connected, that we are not separate, and then being able to use one-on-one interactions to affect the whole. Um, how has that been for you in podcast form? This is a new form, and it's like you're speaking to a microphone, you're having a conversation at Joanna Macy's dining room table, I think, right? And
Hmm.
yet you're both present and listening to the first episode and hearing you talk with Jeremy Blanchard on his podcast, Wider Roots. Um, it's so clear that you're having a one-on-one conversation, you're recording it with audio only, uh, and yet you are being present to a much greater group and somehow connecting with them. So, can you say a little bit about how that was for you in this new format and what the experience was, or anything that you learned from it?
Yeah, um, Joanna was in this process so clear from the very beginning that, like, I mean, I was wearing so many different hats, doing so many different things in this process. I had to shift from being a full-time coach and business owner into being an executive producer and a fundraiser and a podcaster and a writer and an interviewer, all these skills that I didn't have. Um, and I would show up nervous to these conversations. And it was really Joanna's uh, connection to the soul of what we were creating that, like, when I had moments of sort of believing that, like, hmm, when I forgot how many people were energetically in the room with us, like how many people would hear this. Joanna constantly would bring us back to it, and there's many moments in the show, or several, where she, in the middle of conversation with me, sort of like turns to talk to the audience, which was, I think there's some of the more beautiful moments because she does have this extraordinary ability to imagine herself into connection. And as we talk about this in episode 7, which is about deep time and our connection to ancestors and future beings, one of the things she helped me learn in that is that by imagining a connection, we create one. When we do the brave step of imagining that we are connected to one another, or that we are speaking to hundreds of thousands of people who will hear this podcast, hopefully, um, who didn't yet know it was even coming into being, that the connection between us and them then is formed.
Yeah, that's powerful. When we were talking a little bit last week, just catching up, um, talked a little bit about how your experience and training as a coach for many years, and also as a ACE licensed trainer,
Hmm.
um, helped prepare you to show up to this 2-year project. Um, and I think it relates to what you're speaking to in terms of this imagined connection and really being able to tap into um, people on a particular level, even if they're not in the room with you, which is kind of weird. We're connecting right now. We're not in the same room. So anyone
Hmm.
watching this is not here now. So yeah, what
Hmm.
have you learned as a coach and as a licensed academy trainer that's helped prepare you to really
Hmm.
do this in a way that does connect with people?
Well, one of the things is that just practically from years of coaching the people who this podcast was made for, which were, I mean, when we set out to make this, the audience in our heart that we were really making it for are young people, young leaders and activists. And I think we were successful in making something that is will be of great value to anyone. Um, Greg, I lost my train of thought though.
That's good.
Where are we going with that? Sorry, this is
You're
my
sharing
second
so
interview
much.
today.
Yeah, no, we're covering so many wide topics. We're talking about how your coaching skills and skills as a trainer has helped
Yes.
you create in podcast form something that actually connects on a really human
Yeah,
level
yeah,
with people
yeah,
who aren't in the
yeah.
room with you when you're recording it.
Yeah. So thank you. Sorry about that. Um, from years of coaching young climate leaders, I have like indexed the monkey minds of that community in my own head, and I can hear it. Like I can hear the yeah buts. I can hear the longings, not just the monkey minds, the like desires and the worries. And so I think that set me up to be really successful in this because I could put myself into someone who hasn't had the privilege of spending 10 years studying with Joanna, right? And where I was when I first met her and before I came into the ACE tools and um, received all of the great teachings of both of these bodies of work. Um, and then in the License Academy trainer training, we talk a lot about gravitas and what it is to um, speak what's true in you uh, in the way that the group needs to hear it. So like hear the group and what folks are longing for and needing and worrying about, and also at the beginning there's a lot of again like sort of like a Bambi legs, like I would get so caught in my own worries or am I saying this right? Is this landing? And through the repetition and training in the trainer training, learned how to uh, yeah, how to speak and how to teach in a way that feels totally authentic and that is speaking to into other people and who they are. And I think it was a wild exercise in these conversations with Joanna to both be in the very like live struggle of the conversations. Like we did 30 hours of recording, and most of what you hear in the podcast are the moments where Joanna and I are, one of us or both of us are really learning something. It's like where we didn't know we could go or needed to go in the conversation, so they couldn't have been planned. And of course, that's the most alive, that's the most interesting to listen to. It's better stories than us just repeating the things we figured out a while ago. But like to be in that, in my doubt and worry and longing, and to be with Joanna in her version of those experiences, and also to um, have that conversation, feeling the presence uh, of our listeners in the room and what they might need to hear. Um, it's hard to explain, but it was this very sweet dance of being present to multiple things that I really think the License Academy trainer training gave me the skills that I needed in order to be that interviewer and to be that conversation partner with Joanna.
Mhm. Perfect. Um, talking about the audience, you want it partially to be for young people who are getting involved in the Great Turning or helping create the world we're going toward. Yeah, say a little bit more about who specifically this podcast is for and what you hope they'll get out of listening. It's 10 episodes, you know.
Hmm.
What do you really want for people? Who's listening and what do you want for them in these 10 episodes?
Yeah. Well, like I said, we really made this with young people in mind, and it's for anyone who longs to be a part of the Great Turning. I talked earlier about those three stories of our time, and all three are true simultaneously. That we live in global corporate capitalism, business as usual. We live in unraveling, and the Great Turning is happening here. And it's a choice that we get to commit ourselves to the possibility of a more just and life sustaining world. And so this podcast is for anyone who sees themselves or longs to see themselves as a builder of the Great Turning. Yeah, and another piece of what we wanted to give people with this is there's a lot of media right now about the state of the world and about the climate crisis, and it was very intentional that we did this as kitchen table conversations. That I say in the first episode, basically pull up a chair and come sit with Joanna and I here in these conversations. That I believe very deeply in the transformative power of talking about of 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 vulnerability and truth telling, and like really speaking from our hearts about what's happening. I was like, it's so easy because it's so terrifying what's happening on our world right now. We can sort of compartmentalize, right, and talk about things from a very intellectual place. Should we pause? Easy to talk about what's happening with each other from a very intellectual place, from like facts and figures and strategies and how we fix things. And it's also easy to like try to, we try to separate ourselves from it, sort of, I imagine as sort of like a psychological defense. It's just like too much. And what we wanted was for people to feel the sweetness and safety of what it is to sit at a table with a wise friend, and in my case, a beloved elder, um, and talk from that place about what's happening. And so, what I hope this podcast does is invite people to soften, to be able to talk about what's happening in our world from a gentler place, to be in community, to feel permission to be heartbroken or to be angry or to be scared or to hold and carry a thrilling vision for what's possible, and to lead from that place. I did, it's Climate Week here in San Francisco, and I did an event a couple nights ago with 50 people talking about climate storytelling, and everybody who signed up are climate professionals. And we talked about the ways that we as climate professionals can sort of have our professional hats and our analysis and our, the roles of who we are in our organizations. And then we have our personal side, which is, our heartbreak and our love for the earth, and our silliness and our like desire to like lay in the grass and in the sun, and like this sort of like intimate, personal, even spiritual piece is like separated from the part of us that's acting. And we talked about how valuable it is to break down that wall of separation and bring all of us to the work that we do, to allow ourselves to like love our world as much as we do our work, and to be unabashed about that. So that's one of my hopes is that we'll allow ourselves to bring fully online our incredible passion for life into all the things that we do in all of our conversations, because once we start to do that, it's infectious. Like when you're in a room of people who are letting themselves have all of those pieces of themselves, the energy is it's astounding. And I want us to lead from there, because we need that part of ourselves. We need that like electric love for life on board as we act. That's what I hope
I
people will
love it.
get.
Yeah, that's great. It's the best. Well, love to ask one more question that you may or may not know the answer to, but what's next for Jess? What's, where are you excited to focus your energy, having completed this really incredible once in a lifetime project that it's really been a passion project for 2 years.
Oh yeah.
Where do you see you going next?
It depends on what timeline you're talking about, but I'll be for the next couple of months, I'll be trying to get the word out about the project, trying to do more conversations like these and sharing it and creating spaces where we can have those kinds of conversations together, either in online spaces or in person. And then I'm going to take a sabbatical, Greg. I'm going to rest. I'm going to hang out with my friends and my family, and just have an unplugged summer. And after that, my hope is that there'll be more podcasting, is that there'll be more facilitation, more time in rooms with people having heart-centered conversations about what it is to live in this time and how we want to act in service of justice and life.
I love it.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, this is just it's only been a couple days since the podcast comes out, but if
Yeah,
things go my way, it'll make a big splash and many totally surprising things will happen. So I'm
yeah,
I'm ready to ride that wave, whatever it is that comes.
great. Well, such an amazing contribution you've made.
Thank you.
And I look forward to just seeing how it unfolds. If you're watching this, please check out the podcast. We Are the Great Turning. Um, it'll make you
Go
feel
to
some
the
things.
website.
Yeah, go to the website. What's the website? We'll
We are
put it
the
in the
great turning.com. And when you go to the
great.
website, there is a toolkit. This is actually another place where my coaching skills and my academy trainer skills have come in, is that I created um, a toolkit and bonus exercises to go with most of the episodes to take the ideas from each episode and bring them deeper into your life to practice. There's conversation prompts for so you can listen and talk to people. And my big hope is that it will be a jumping off point for people to have the kinds of conversations that they really long to have with the people in their life about what's happening in the world. So that's
Great.
all. You can find all those tools at the website.
Perfect. Well, we'll put the link in the comments and check it out. It's really powerful stuff. It'll move you to action and
Maybe so.
nourish your heart. And this has just been great, Jess. You're the best. Thanks for
Greg,
taking
you're the
this
best.
time.
It's so sweet. It's so cool to have this conversation with you now, what, 15 years since we met as
Yep.
youth climate activists ourselves.
Yep, absolutely. It's the best. I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we'll talk again soon, but thanks for this time and
All right.
go check out the website.
All right.
Thanks, Jess.
Bye.